Ever wonder if your favorite monuments in Assassin's Creed Odyssey are real? Well, let's get an art historian's take. Pausanias actually tells us that the building was built and dedicated in the first couple of years of the Peloponnesian War, and the objects that the Athenians actually put in there are from other Greeks. So that is a little bit of an issue because that gives us about a 50 to 60 year gap between the Peloponnesian War and the Persian War. Now, unfortunately, that means that our ancient sources actually don't really corroborate each other. So, is there anything else we can look at? Well, there was actually an inscription on the stylobate, and the stylobate are the steps that take you up into a portico or up into a temple. And the inscription actually tells us that the Athenians dedicated ropes and figureheads from ships captured from their enemies in this portico. Now, unfortunately, enemies is just a little bit vague. That could refer to the Persians or to the Greeks. So unfortunately, that's not exactly a lot of help. However, scholars have taken a look at the letter forms and said that some of the forms are actually done in an older style. So that would maybe possibly support the idea that this was built kind of right after the Persian War. However, the scholars that like to support Pausanias will tell you that the building is actually built in a style that is more popular during the later period. So unfortunately, we've got certain things in the style of the building that reflect kind of older styles, and we've got certain things in the building that reflect newer styles. So that's not really helpful. I would like to take a moment to actually talk about the things that were actually put in the portico, because these things are really important and really kind of cool. So as you're running through the game, you'll actually see that there is the prow of a trireme inside the portico. There's also a lot of shields and armor. Now, those are the types of things that the Greeks would actually dedicate at temples and sanctuaries and other important locations, as if to say that the god of that particular sanctuary had actually backed their side as opposed to their enemy's side. And so by giving gifts to the gods, they were saying how grateful they were to the gods for their help. So we really should look at that inscription and think about it a little bit more. The Athenians are telling us that they took these objects from their enemies. Now, why would they not just tell us who the enemy was? If it was the Persians, why not just say so? So some scholars who actually support the later date say that the Athenians didn't want to actually name who the enemy was because it was another Greek. And Greek policies were notorious for kind of switching sides. One moment you could be friends with the Athenians, and the next minute you could be at war with them. So the Athenians might have been thinking of this from a political point of view. Do you really want a name on an incredibly public monument in one of the Pan-Hellenic sites of Greece, where everyone from all over Greece and surrounding territories from Greece are going to go and see we the Athenians beat so-and-so? So let's say it was something like the Athenians beating the Boeotians or the Spartans. Do the Athenians really want to state in such a public place during such a time period that was so contentious who these people were? So all in all, the Athenians might have just been being very diplomatic about that, thinking to themselves, well, this was a pretty great victory. We just put a monument up. Of course, the rest of the Greeks are going to know who it was that we beat. So maybe they didn't feel the need to actually have to name who that person was, and thus kind of keep it a little bit more ambiguous. So they might have been thinking about those potential future relationships with other Greeks and kind of thinking, we don't really need to put that name there. Now, I've given you guys just a little bit of the evidence that art historians, archaeologists, and other scholars look at in order to determine the date of this building. Now, I will tell you that most scholars actually go with an early date, that the Athenians actually did put this up right after the Persian War and actually dedicated those spoils of war at that time. Now, that early date does not negate the fact that the Athenians could have continued to have used the portico, giving dedications after other conflicts as well. So maybe that is how we get the information from Pausanias, in which he is looking at the portico and talking about later dedications made during the Peloponnesian War. Now, that might actually work with what we've got in the game because we have both Spartan and Athenian armor in that building. We also have this kind of fantastic battering ram off of a trireme, which is just so impressive and really cool to get to walk up next to. And we have to realize that the Athenians actually did put things like this in these kinds of dedications. Now, that also means the Athenians are carrying up really awesome spoils of war to this dedication. And that just helps to support the story and the narrative that the Athenians are a powerhouse force in Greece, even after the Persian War. So whether or not we know the date, we have to look at this monument as being really, really impressive. So the Athenians really just want to express to the rest of the Greeks in surrounding territories that they are militarily strong, that they are powerful, that they're capable, and they're staying around. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this take, and I'll see you guys next week.